My name's Steve Isherwood, Joint Chief Executive of the ISE and responsible for knowledge and insights work that we do. I'll be acting as host for today's session. We'll do some introductions in a moment. But today's webinar is very much around AI technology, how it's impacting the whole world of student recruitment. This has been a long-running topic of conversation now on many of our forums and many of our events, and lots of people are kind of grappling with a number of different challenges within AI, partly around what it actually what it means for students and the experiences students go through and how they are supposed to use or not use AI when it comes to recruitment, what messages employers should be sending to students in terms of whether or not they should be using AI in their selection processes, and also actually how it is impacting the world of recruitment. And we've got an excellent selection and assessment and how actually it's going to impact actually the kind of systems that we all use. So very big topic that we're going to cover over the next 45 minutes or so. As with all ISE webinars, we'll record it, so you will be able to get a follow-up recording to it. And also, we will also put that link out on our website, so anybody can access to it if they want to follow up on the conversation. But we always like this to be interactive, so please use the Q&A box, please use the chat box. I'll be keeping an eye on all of that, and we'll definitely have time at the end to so you can ask your questions of our expert panelists. So let's get started without further ado. Again, apologies for the slight delay. If we do some introductions first, and then each of our panelists is going to give us a rundown on their take of what's happening, and then we'll pick up the individual conversations. Sorry, we'll pick up individual questions from there. So if we go around my screen, David, would you like to go first and just do us a brief introduction?
Yeah, sure thing. So my name's David Molyneux. I'm the head of employer engagement at the University of Warwick. So I manage 3 teams. We look after careers fairs and employer engagement, kind of graduate recruitment work, as well as our work-based learning and our international programs as well.
Fantastic. Thank you, David. Sam, would you like to go next?
Good afternoon. I'm Samantha Hope, and I'm the head of emerging talent at Shoesmiths. So we're a UK law firm who works with clients mainly covering real estate, commercial, litigation, and corporate law. And in my role in emerging talent, I head up the graduate programme, which is trainee solicitors and also solicitor apprentices.
Great, thanks, Samantha. And Robert, would you like to introduce yourself? And then you're going to kind of kick off our thinking this afternoon, aren't you? So talking about actually the rise of AI-assisted mass applications, the context from your side, what you see as driving the trend, etc. So why don't you do your introduction and then just take us straight into that in the interest of time, if that's okay with you?
Sure, Stephen, thank you very much. And good afternoon, everybody. So I'm Robert Newry, Chief Explorer at Arctic Shores. I co-founded it 11 years ago. We're a task-based psychometric assessment company. And my passion in life has always been about how do you uncover potential. And my philosophy was, well, the best way to understand people is to get them to do something rather than tell you how they might do something. And that is what the mission of Arctic Shores has been, is to uncover potential by getting people to do tasks and learn about them in that way. And we've worked over 350 different customers and assessed more than 3 million candidates from 45 different countries. But today, and this is the hot topic of the moment, and I imagine for many of the people on the call today, as we start university courses, there's a lot of new graduate programs that are being released by all the graduate employers. And so the big challenge that has come about has really been the rise of AI. And the thing that I like to emphasize around this is that there's been a power shift. And the difference, one of the many differences from AI, but particularly from an early careers application point of view, has been that the candidates now have in their fingertips, on their phones, access to as powerful a set of technology as any of us have done in recruitment. And that really changes the whole dynamic around the recruitment process, because up until now, the power has very much been in the hands of the recruiter. But when you have candidates with the ability to use all sorts of different technologies, I mean, ChatGPT is the obvious one, and they're becoming extremely good at using that as part of actually their education. And I'm sure David will refer to that a bit more. But you've got other tools now that are making mass applications feasible and possible in a way that they weren't before. So things like Easy Apply, Apply.ai, there's even one called Lazy Apply .ai, which means that you can, as a candidate, put your details into one of these applications. You can then target it to the type of roles that you're looking for, and then the application will apply on your behalf while you sleep. And this has been exacerbated and accelerated by other developments as well. So you've got LinkedIn, as well as Indeed and some of the other CV library, where quite a lot of student roles and graduate roles are advertised as well, where we've had a one-click apply, try and make it really easy for candidates to apply. This was the big thing in the past, and that we wanted to make it as frictionless as possible. And now that they have AI tools, this makes it super easy for candidates to mass apply. So Stephen, you and the ISE have shown some research around this, that the number of applications has gone up from 80 to 140 per role, almost doubling. And this mass applications is partly driven by just the volume of people wanting to apply for roles, but it's also driven by this ease of which candidates are now able to apply for multiple roles, and they believe that it's a numbers game. You can go and look at the student forums, look at Reddit, and lots of discussions out there about, I applied for 50 roles, 70 roles. I was talking to somebody the other day whose son had applied for 180, and that is not uncommon now for candidates to be talking about that they've applied for loads and loads and loads, and they even forgetting how many they've applied for and who they've applied for. So the impact of this is threefold that I think for a lot of organizations to think about, and we can discuss further. One is you just got this volume that's come in at the top of the funnel now, which is not just an issue around how do people tackle that volume. I mean, I've had some graduate employers I've talked to who've gone from 5,000 applications for 20 or 30 roles to 20,000 applications in the last 2 or 3 years. So the volume that's coming in is just in itself a big problem, but actually that's causing further issues as well. So if you think that the typical sifting that goes on in an application process, you might take out with traditional assessment sort of 40% at the top of the funnel, and then you go down through a video interview and assessment centers before you make the offer. With the volume now so enormous that the old sift rates that we used to be able to manage our pipeline with are no longer feasible in addressing these kind of volumes. So you've got just the size of the volume, but then you've just got the way that we manage that. And if we don't change and rethink how we do that screening of candidates, it's just going to break the systems, and it's certainly going to put the costs through the roof at a time when we're trying to reduce costs. The second big impact around this is the sea of sameness. So many of the people that I talk to are saying that applications now are increasingly similar, whether that's application forms, whether that's cover letters. All parts of the process is because candidates are using ChatGPT and other tools in order to support their application. And without decent guidance, they are in a lot of cases just copying and pasting straight out of these tools. And so everything is starting to look the same, which is not good for candidates. And it's also not good for recruiters as well, because how do you differentiate at a time when you don't have some of those other data points, because we've moved away, rightly so, from a specific degree classification and other data points that we used to use. So if the application forms are all similar, we've got a challenge. And then the last thing around this is just integrity. And there are lots of cases that I hear about of candidates turning up to assessment centres not being the quality or the type of person that the prior application had indicated. So you've got these big impacts that we have to think about and deal with: the volume and how do we manage that, a sea of sameness and an integrity. And the way that people are addressing this is threefold at the moment. One is you've got the first is just going, okay, this is just too much for me to handle. I'm largely going to ignore it. I'm going to close applications early because that's the only way that I can do it. And they're not really trying to address it because they just haven't got the time, haven't got the bandwidth, or whatever it might be. Ultimately, that's not really addressing it. It's just trying to push the problem to another cycle. But given the volumes, I just don't think that's going to be effective. The second way that people are trying to address this is to use AI to fight AI. And I think that just in itself also has challenges around this, because if you start using AI, for example, to do deter and detect, you are in an arms race with candidates on who's got the better AI. And the answer to that question is that candidates will have the better AI because they're not restrained in the way that corporates are with GDPR compliance, IT security, long test and learn before we're comfortable with using these things. Candidates can put it straight onto their phone, whatever the latest trick, tool, app that's out there, and they are ready to then use that within the application process. The other problem with deter and detect is that AI, using AI tools for that, is notoriously inaccurate and gives false positives. And one of the tragic stories that I've heard from the last 3 or 4 months is a candidate who had applied to Magic Circle law firm and had been rejected on the basis that she had used AI. Turned out that she hadn't used AI, she was just neurodiverse, and so was ringing around other law firms to find out if they were using detection tools, because if they did, she wasn't going to apply to them, didn't want to go through that traumatic experience of being rejected for doing something she hadn't done. And so I think that has to be brought into consideration around this whole, do we use AI to fight AI? And then the last one, and I'll use this to then hand over to Sam on this, is, okay, well, how do we adapt and adjust our processes to accept that AI is out there, the candidates are using it, we're going to want them to use it when they come into our organizations. Everybody's talking about using AI tools like Microsoft's Copilot. So if they're going to be using AI tools, and we want them to be using AI tools when they come into the organization, why wouldn't we be encouraging that as part of the recruitment process? So if you're going to take that adapt and adjust approach to it, then you have to think about, well, how are you going to describe your use and candidates' use of AI on your website? You have to give good guidance on it, because if you don't give guidance, candidates don't know what is good use and bad use, and you still end up then with a sea of sameness. You have to understand the integrity of your process. You have to test it, have a go at using AI tools to see if your process has got the integrity that you believe it to have. And then lastly, I think you have to think about how you might use AI and get students or candidates to be using AI as part of the process. I'm seeing quite a lot of organizations now talking about in the assessment center, can we design tasks where people will be using AI as part of the project work that you'll get them to do in the assessment center and the evaluation that you'll then make on them. And that is a great way of being able to show that you're forward thinking about the way that you will be asking your future hires to be using AI once they start with you. So a quick whistle-stop tour there to cover a number of different things, hopefully to give some different sort of thought perspectives for people to challenge us on afterwards. But on that note, there's my quick summary to kick things off on that topic.
Fantastic, Robert. Great summary of actually just how much change is just ripping right through the whole sort of process and system. We were chatting, weren't we, before we went live around just that pace has speeded up as well. When you go back to earlier adoptions of technology, actually there seemed to be a longer lead time and a bit of toing and fro, whereas this just seems to be a pretty rapid pace. I'm sure you got lots of questions for Robert. I did, but I'm not going to hog the agenda. So please do use the Q&A box on the Zoom tool or the chat box. I'm keeping an eye on those. We have got time for questions at the end. Sam, would you like to come in now and just talk to us about actually how you see that from an employer's perspective? You know, when I first started to hear about the increase in application volumes, I was a little bit I wouldn't say disbelieving, but it just seems huge. But actually, the more and more we've unpicked it from our point of view, I know that's just one aspect of it that's showing through in terms of the way things are changing. I'm sure there's other ways. So Sam, what's the kind of the impact of multiple offers, etc. Sorry, multiple applications, from your perspective, and that use of candidates using AI in applying to Shoesmiths?
Stephen, thank you, Robert. So I wonder how many times we're going to say AI during this webinar today. Maybe it can count it up for us at the end. I thought I'd do a bit of a deep dive into our process and how we introduced it, because that really lays the foundations nicely for how we're seeing the numbers of applications coming in and how much they're increasing or not. And I obviously don't profess that this is the only way to address AI, but this is how we've approached it, and it's worked really well for us. So it was back in kind of late 2023, we were thinking about refreshing our application form ready for the next recruitment season. And when we were having conversations about the application changes that we were making for that year, we were asked, so are you going to add a button, for candidates to tick so they can say, oh, I've not used AI? And that's really what prompted us to actually say, oh, right, okay, well, that seems like a really automatic thing that everybody seems to be doing. That did seem to be what everybody was doing. Everyone was saying, no, God, candidates can't use AI on the application form. That's so ridiculous. Don't let them use that. Let's add this box and make sure that they're ticking it to say they didn't. And at the time, inside the firm, we were introducing Copilot, Microsoft Copilot, and we were one of the first law firms to be piloting that. So that was quite exciting at the time inside as well. And so all of that really aligned perfectly. And we challenged that viewpoint that we should just ban candidates using AI. And we said, actually, why don't we embrace it? Because we're obviously running this pilot program to introduce Microsoft Copilot into the business. So feels a bit at odds to then say they can't use it at the job application stage. So in that first year, when we introduced it, by introducing it, we basically said you can use AI to help you write your application form. And as Robert said there, application forms might not necessarily be the best way of assessing a candidate's potential, and I'll come on to that a bit later. But that's what we've got at the moment. And in that first year, we found around 1 in 3 applicants were using AI in some way, and they were happy to tell us that they were using it in that way. So around a third, and that really matched the market data at the time around both the ISE and Robert's research in the area. So we thought, okay, that seems about right. And we were obviously using it internally as a business too. And a lot of people have said to me, wow, like, so how did you get past that challenge of saying, you didn't want to ban it? And actually I'm quite lucky to be supported by our senior leadership team, who are quite cutting edge in their thinking, very forward thinking in terms of AI. But I did face some skepticism along the way, and I went into a partner meeting to discuss something entirely different. And at the end of the meeting, I was totally blindsided when a partner asked me in front of the room full of partners, so what are we doing to ban the candidates using AI? And I said, well, we're not banning it. And it was like a deathly silence. And I don't think it was actually silent for that long in the room, but you know, when you think, oh, you just feel your stomach sink, you're thinking what to say. And it was quite a pivotal moment actually, because it meant that after I'd sort of gathered those stumbling moments there, I explained why we were choosing this different approach, and I articulated it, and actually had to do so, articulate it many occasions after that, but always knowing in the background that we were doing it to align with the approach of our business as a whole, not just at the recruitment stage. So once we'd made that decision, we thought, well, we can't just leave the candidates to figure out what to do. How will they know what our approach is, especially if everybody else is banning it? So we produced some guidance on how they should or shouldn't use AI and what our approach was. And we really emphasised originality, personal voice, opinion was still really important to us. It wasn't about copy and pasting at all. And we shared that advice on our website through Instagram. We created a lot of social media content to back it up. We did lots of Q&A sessions and integrated it into our insight evenings. So we were very vocal about our approach to it, because we thought that that was the best thing to do for the candidates, to really let them know, you know, what we were expecting of them, and that we were different perhaps to whoever else they were applying to. But we didn't want to just put the guidance out and then kind of leave them to it. We wanted to integrate it into our process as well. So as part of the application form, we had a dedicated question, so a long answer question, and we asked them about their own approach to AI. So we said, how do you expect to use AI as a future solicitor? And then if you've used AI to help you craft this application form, let us know about an example about how you used it to elevate your application form. And so for us, that did two things. It encouraged candidates to think about their own use of AI, to think about that in a commercial setting, how we were using it, how they would use it as a future solicitor. But it also signaled to them, actually, this is something we're really interested in. This is something that we want you to know about and be interested in as well. So as well as kind of trying to upskill the candidates ourselves, we started working with universities and doing webinars just like this, talking to candidates and helping them to understand the type of way that they could use it in an application form. And it wasn't all just about saying to ChatGPT, rewrite my personal statement for me, or answer this question. A law firm has asked this, answer this. You know, we were trying to teach them different ways of approaching their use of AI. And it's not just about careers. So I've also had to upskill myself. So I am a user of Gen AI in my daily life, both personally and at work. I use it for efficiencies, productivity, for drafting emails using tone of voice. But what I needed to upskill myself on is how our lawyers are using it in the business. And we've come quite a long way in that sort of 1.5 to 2 years. Lawyers are using it for reviewing contracts, managing projects, supporting client relationships, and many more ways. There's lots of tools that they use as lawyers that I don't use in my role. And so upskilling me so that I could then teach the candidates, this is how you will use it as a lawyer, and that's why we're interested in you being able to use it now, was really important. And being able to collaborate with other teams in the business, like the performance and talent development team, because obviously they're talking about future skills, they're thinking about upskilling their business as a whole. So then this year we thought, okay, second year running it, we kind of, that worked with us for the application form, but we'd actually like to introduce it into our assessment centre. And again, there's lots of tools coming onto the market, professing for you to be able to assess AI skills. And we wanted to use it as a bit of a theme for our assessment centre. We always run an immersive assessment centre, which is suitable for law and non-law candidates. And they absolutely don't need to know all about AI to succeed on the day. But one of the exercises, we did want to ask them about their approach. So overall, as a theme of the day, the theme was AI-powered solutions for a fictional client, and they had to weigh up benefits and risks and costs and ethical considerations like data privacy. So that was a bit of an overall theme. But then in one of the tasks, we gave them all a laptop and access to Copilot, and we said, we actively encourage you to use Copilot to help you prepare for a 5-minute verbal presentation that you'll do later on in the day. We didn't mark them, oh, you get a score because you used Copilot. We didn't mark them down because they didn't. We didn't score them on output. We didn't get them to print anything out of Copilot or reread it or script it or anything like that. So we weren't assessing the Copilot output, and I think that's really important to mention. But then in the task, when they did the verbal presentation, after that, the assessors asked them, explain how you used AI in your prep for this task, or tell us a bit about how you use it currently at study or work, and also about what their thoughts were about issues like privacy, ethics, and sustainability. So we were able to gain a bit more insights into the candidates, into their judgment, critical thinking, their ability to reflect on what is a really hot topic for the industry at the time. And I mentioned sustainability there, and I think that's really important to note as well, because candidates we find are really interested in this, and actually I don't see the professionals talking quite as much about it. But using AI is using a huge amount of power, and so just because we can use it for everything doesn't mean we should necessarily be using it for everything. And this is a really silly analogy, but I'll share it anyway. But just if you want to cook some rice and you've got a little saucepan of rice, you're not going to be turning on every single hob just to cook your one saucepan. You're just going to turn on your one hob, your favourite hob ring. I know that we've all got one, mine's back left. And then you're going to cook your rice on there. You know, you don't need the power and the energy coming out of all those cylinders to sort of blast your content forward. So really silly example, but I'm sure you get what I'm getting at there with, I think that people are overusing it right now. They're using it for everything. They're typing in refine this, polish this, write this email for this. But actually, I think people are experimenting. They're enjoying learning about what it can do for them. And I think we will all settle into a place where we're using it for much better efficiencies rather than just those really basic commands. So I'm coming to an end now. I'm going to hand over to David in a second, but I just wanted to mention that you won't be surprised to hear that I'm an AI champion at Shoesmiths, and that means that I help colleagues to explore how they can use AI effectively at work and at all different levels. And that's been great for my own personal upskilling in, again, learning about how lawyers are using it, but also so that I can teach our candidates as well. And I think that's a really important part of my role in careers now, to set those expectations for them. As a business, we've set a link between our AI usage and our bonus, our financial bonus for the firm, which is a really clear signal that our senior leadership and our business, you know, are putting AI as a real priority, and a real signal to the industry as well. So what I do want to say, though, and I think I mentioned it already, but we don't use AI to deliver legal advice as a business, and I don't use AI to screen candidates. And we receive around 2,000 to 3,000 applications a year for our roles. So high volumes, hugely tempting to use AI to help sort and filter those. But at the moment, we don't trust the tools that are available to us to create an unbiased process, and so that's why we're not using it. We're still making human decisions. So just about Robert's point about the increase in applications, we're hearing that a lot of firms are reporting an increase of around 40% on their applications, and they're often linking that to those one-click tools, one-click apply tools, copy and paste style AI submissions. We actually saw an increase of around 10%, so much more modest number, and I really believe that that was due to our approach in managing expectations of the candidates, setting out the expectations of what they should and shouldn't do when it comes to AI. And I think that I mean, let's be honest, we don't just want more applications, do we? We want better quality applications. If anything, maybe fewer applications would be great, but better quality. And when we were looking at the candidate scores, we checked the data over the last few years. Both at application stage and again at assessment centre stage, we saw that their scores were consistently higher this year than they were in the previous 2 years. So there's always that fear that candidates could game the system at an application stage, which is much more anonymous. And of course, they've always been able to do that because their mum or dad or friend or tutor could have filled in their application for them. Now, maybe it's AI. The idea is that they could game it at application stage and then fall short when they come to an in-person assessment centre. But our data actually showed that the uplift in scores was broadly the same at both of those stages. So to me, that showed that candidates are getting smarter, whether that's with or without the use of AI, but they're learning to enhance and elevate their applications to apply themselves more effectively. And I am here for it, even if it is with AI that they're using to help themselves, because actually in the workplace, I want them to produce excellent work output, and that might be with or without AI. So it seems right that they should be able to do that at the application stage as well, as long as that's consistent throughout the process. So this year was our second year of embracing candidates' use of AI. So around 50% of candidates said they used it to help them at the application stage. So that's up from 30% the first year. I suspect the percentage is higher, but that's how many are happy to tell us about it. And when we looked at the data to show how many of our successful candidates had, so when we went through the whole process, how many successful candidates that we offered had used AI, had said they'd used it in the process, it was around 80%. So it kind of showed that a lot of those candidates were successful and were using it. So my closing thought is this. It's just one piece of the puzzle in assessing and developing talent, but I don't think it's a piece that we can afford to ignore. So what are you doing to think about both signaling to the market that you're interested in AI and that it's part of your process, but also that it's a part of your process because it's important for the candidates at the now and for their career in the future? Thank you.
Fantastic, Sam. Thanks very much, Sam. Lots in there to dissect. It's interesting. We're just putting together the recruitment survey, so I can't give the answers yet because Claire will shoot me. I had a research, but actually the overall indication is that employer use of AI in recruitment is still very, very low, which is interesting. And also that piece around applications. Yeah, we've got a mixed bag. Some employers getting still big increase in application volumes, whereas some organizations it's leveled out. So there's more to dissect on that. So great. Thank you very much, Sam. We've got some questions through already. I've been keeping an eye on those. Some great questions for our panelists that we'll have time for at the end. But before we get to that, last but by no means least, to David. David is at the student end of the spectrum because we've talked a lot about actually the I guess the processes we put students through from the assessment, the employer angle of it. But what actually are those thoughts of those working with students and the student experience? David, would you like to share your thoughts with our audience?
Yes, thank you very much, Steve. I will be relatively brief. I mean, I think first of all, I need to say my favourite hob is probably front left. If I'm forced to think about it. Just a caveat. Some of the things I'm going to be saying. So I do have a few numbers to pull out here. I should say that these refer to Warwick students. I don't have sort of generalist HE numbers, and also the context in which I'm talking is very Warwick focused, kind of unique to the Warwick ecosystem. And just for a little bit of background on that, what that means is at Warwick we have highly autonomous departments who go and do their own things, which is great from a kind of variety point of view, but it can create some interesting issues around disparity of experience, particularly in terms of the topic of AI. So I just wanted to give that context there before I start. I also just wanted to mention the fact that for HE, AI is a fundamental challenge, not just at the end of the student stage. So the bit where students are coming into university and they are engaging in their academic content, the challenges around AI are suffuse through all of that. And there's a huge amount of discrepancy in terms of what different departments do. So I was talking to the director of student experience for liberal arts this morning, for example, and she was saying that in liberal arts, AI use absolutely prohibited. You're not allowed to use it at all. And if it's suspected you will be brought up before an academic integrity tribunal, and you'll be asked to account for your actions. In that conversation, I then asked, well, how do you actually detect it? And at that point, the certainty of the process became a little bit more blurred, because I think whereas it might be quite easy to detect a piece of work that has been solely AI generated, if there's been an AI assist in creating it, much harder to detect. And also a question about, how would you even prove that? And so they're kind of relying on students' honesty. So they're asking them to use AI, and then if they say yes, then they're being punished, which I'm not sure is the most robust of systems. But on the flip side of that, we've got the business school, we've got Warwick Manufacturing Group, we've got maths and stats. They're all using or inviting students to use AI as part of their course, and they are doing work on that. And indeed, departments like life science are inviting students to submit a cover sheet with work disclosing how they have used AI in the academic work that they are submitting. About 73% of Warwick students are reporting that they've used AI in some capacity, but the majority of those are reporting that they are they are at a beginner level or an intermediate level. So there are very few of our students are saying they are experts in AI, but quite a lot of them are using it. However, those who aren't using it tend to cite things like a concern about diminishing their own skills if they start to use AI. They say that AI can't really be trusted in terms of its results, and that's something certainly I can concur with in terms of when I've used AI for things. You always have to check it. And then also there was a feeling that AI use was detrimental to society as a whole, which was another thing that our students reported. The number one thing that students said they wanted from the university, and I would extrapolate this out to employers as well, was clear guidance on what is appropriate and what is not appropriate. That's the number one thing they say when we ask them, how can we support you with AI use? So I just wanted to give that background of how AI is fitting into the whole HE picture, and I'm sure colleagues on the call who are from other institutions will have similar thoughts. Moving on to the kind of graduate recruitment side of things. So I think fundamentally at Warwick, we understand there's going to be a strategic shift. I mean, as Robert and Samantha have been saying, that increase in numbers just completely changes the model that the employers are going to be engaging with universities on. I mean, so at the moment we're currently in career fair season, or we're gearing up for our career fairs. We have seen a reduction in bookings for some of our events as compared to other years, and I know other Russell groups are in similar. The picture's mixed, but there has been a general drop in bookings, and I think that comes down to that point of why would you spend money potentially to come to a careers fair to generate another 2,000 applications when you can't deal with the ones that you're currently getting. And so I think we're in a situation where we're going to be starting to have conversations with employers about different models of engagement away from the kind of mass fair type model where it's just all about exposure and quantity into more quality type arrangements. So something where we are potentially looking at more specific cohorts of students, smaller cohorts, maybe doing more interactive activity. So maybe some of the assessment type activity that would normally happen in assessment centres happens as part of the shortlisting or part of the kind of pre-application stage. I'd also say that on that topic, about 51% of our students report that they are concerned about bias or discrimination in the graduate recruitment process as a result of AI. So it is something they are very aware of as being a tool that might be emerging into the graduate recruitment market. In terms of what we've been doing so far, I mean, obviously AI isn't that new. I think up until this point, in terms of our career support at Warwick, we've been adopting a slightly inappropriate analogy, but a sort of safer sex education type model. We know students are going to be doing it, but we want them to do it safely. And so what we've been doing is pointing out the risks. We've been talking to students about what employers have fed back to us, particularly those ones that say they absolutely will reject applications where they suspect AI usage. But we've also been looking at how they can use AI to create better tailored applications. So in doing things like thinking about writing prompts that ask the student questions to help them elaborate and articulate their skills, their competencies, and dissect their experiences in ways that resonate in a more traditional application form. That's what we've been doing so far. Whether that kind of stands the test of time, as I suspect the graduate labour market moves away from application forms, cover letters, CVs, I think they'll be moving into a very different realm there. We'd also highlight the risk of kind of generating inaccurate information, and how, if you ask AI to write you an application, it will often throw in some stuff there that is completely made up, which is not useful. One thing I would say though, just in terms of our CV and application support, we have seen a reduction in the number of terrible CVs or terrible applications. You used to see a proportion of them which were effectively a CV that had been written in an A-level class during an afternoon and then had just had a degree shoved on as a single line. You don't tend to see that anymore. They all tend to be of a slightly higher quality with slightly more content, but when you start to dig through it, there's not necessarily that much substance there. So we have seen an improvement on the kind of bottom layer of CV quality and application quality, I guess. And also maybe from students whose English isn't their first language, AI seems to have been a very useful tool for them in creating stronger applications. They were my main thoughts that I wanted to share with the group today, but I'm happy to take further questions and kind of elaborate on those points further as we go on.
That's great, David. Thanks very much. And of course, it was universities, I suppose, that had saw the impact of AI first in students using it actually for their academic studies before it started to hit the world of employment. I remember at the time thinking, "Oh yeah, I can see which way direction of travel this is heading." So I guess the university at the forefront of that kind of the ethics of AI use, etc. Okay, let's get stuck into the questions. So we've got plenty coming through. I'll try and consolidate some together where there's a similar theme. And actually, the first question one a bit later on, which I thought I'd come to you first, David, and then Sam and Robert, I'll come to you as well, which is actually thinking around access to AI and premium subscriptions, and actually the danger that, I mean, I don't think about this because we have Copilot as part of our license, so it's all to do with work systems. But actually, do you see that from a student perspective, or do they get AI tools, you know, through being a student at Warwick? You know, they've got it as part of their whole access to HE systems. Is that, yeah, premium access, does that cause just inherent discrimination in who's got access to certain tools and who hasn't?
So internally, we have Microsoft Copilot, as I suspect other colleagues might as well. Glad you raised this actually, because there was one stat that I wrote down that I forgot to mention. So about 76% of the students who do use AI don't use paid tools. So they report that the free ones are sufficient for their needs. And by far and away, the most popular one is ChatGPT. That's what our internal surveys say. I have certainly heard that theme of, do paid tools give a significant advantage in the selection process previously, mostly in the guise of assisting with assessment center style activity or online testing. So, you know, you can take pictures and you can get it to generate answers very, very quickly. I'm not so sure that it is actually that robust, and certainly I've had colleagues from employers talking about how they've tried to replicate that and actually haven't been able to do that. But for me, the jury's still out on whether actually the models that you pay for do substantially help you in that area. But I don't know whether Samantha and Robert have thoughts on that.
Yeah, Sam, do you want to take that one? Is that something you think about? Because there was also a question here from Kate, I think it was. No, that was a different one. Sorry, I'm keeping an eye on the chat and both the Q&A at the same time. Julie was actually, yes, talking about demographics of actually who might be disclosing and who might not be. So yes, any thoughts on that, Sam?
Yeah, so the paid usage of different types of tools was something that we considered quite early on, and we haven't seen that. We've kept asking candidates, we've kept kind of reviewing and surveys and things like that in the last year and a half, and that is something that we've been asking about, and it's not something that we're seeing coming through as a challenge for us. We're not also directly like scoring people up or down on their usage, but the argument, I guess, is that perhaps they could develop a better answer, craft a more personal answer, perhaps with a paid version. But we're not currently seeing that. In terms of demographics and link to DEI, yeah, that was really important to us. And that's part of the reason we don't currently use it to screen application forms, because we don't trust that side of it. We've always had a close eye on DEI, obviously. But this year, I would say we've offered our most diverse cohort of individuals, and that's looking both at all of kind of gender, race, ethnicity, and disability as well, which takes into account neurodiverse candidates. In our sort of surveys and talkings with candidates, we're finding that a lot of people who have a neurodiversity are saying, or who are neurodiverse are saying that they use it and they find it incredibly useful. And I think might be some of Robert's research that actually showed that candidates from Black heritage background were much more likely to use it than other candidates as well. And so for us, we've always seen it as a really good use to level the playing ground for candidates rather than taking away that leveling. I do have the data, and I just had a quick look in the background to see if I could pull our actual stats, because I just said this is the most diverse cohort I've hired this summer, and I do have the stats somewhere, but just not to hand. But I am, yeah, more than happy to share those.
No worries. Thanks, Sam. Robert, what are your views on the access to AI and who's using it and isn't, and sort of broader DI? And also, actually, there's another question, if I can feed another one in, around actually research into that, because you mentioned neurodivergent candidates and false positives. Somebody's asking actually about, is there any detailed research into that as well?
So on the first one about paid access and unpaid access, that was a potential problem early on when the ChatGPT strategy was to hold back a lot of its really strong capabilities and features behind a paywall. Less so now. In terms of what a tool like ChatGPT can do, along the lines of what Sam just said about leveling the playing field, the free tools give you all that you require on that. So I'm less worried about that now than I was. You have to keep watching it though, because there are new things, image recognition, image interpretation, that may undermine the integrity of some of the recruitment processes around this. So we've got to keep an eye on it, but I don't think it is a big challenge in the way that it might have been when ChatGPT first came out. In terms of research on false positives, there's loads of research on false positives around AI detection, not least ChatGPT itself withdrawing after 3 months its own AI detection tool because it wasn't reliable enough. In terms of whether that specifically impacts neurodiverse candidates, I've not seen anything in particular around that. The research has just been around the number of false positives. I mean, it can be as high as 40% false positives, which is obviously very, very concerning around this. And I think the neurodiverse candidates, it is, as Sam was saying, actually, it's an incredibly positive tool to support, particularly around dyslexics, dyspraxics. So it does very much send a negative message. We heard from David about the really big challenge, liberal arts, saying, well, we have to ban it, but there is no decent way of banning it, and even the AI companies themselves recognize the challenge around that.
All right. Can I just stick with you, Robert, to go around the sort of the next sort of batch of questions I'm going to pull together, because there's a theme in the questions around actually vanilla applications is the way I'd phrase it, which is, and I've seen this myself in some of the hiring we didn't think there's some really good applications here. Then you realize you can tell they've been created with the assistance of assuming AI, because good words that don't necessarily have much depth to them. I've heard employers talking about all candidates seeming the same from AI and really difficult to differentiate. Somebody's asking the question of how do still very much use application forms and questions to differentiate candidates. So I'm guessing in there that my question is around, is the question and answer type of application form dead? Does it not work anymore? So I'd be interested to know your thoughts on that, and also how candidates can differentiate themselves through a selection process. Where do we need to go with selections so that we do keep that ability to differentiate in terms of bottom line to get to who's best for the role?
Yeah, I mean, I'll just give a couple of quick points on that one. Are they? Is it dead as a way of screening candidates? The answer to that is no, if done in the right way. And I think, and I've often said this, that Sam and what she's done on the Shoesmiths website in terms of clarity of guidance of what good looks like and bad looks like is the way to address that. I think if candidates know that the danger of copy and pasting is that they will just look like everybody else and they won't stand out, then they're not, helping themselves in any way. And I think that's the point about, and it links to David's point from students as well on this one in terms of their research. You've got to give really, really good guidance on this. I'm actually starting to see some companies now even giving suggestions of prompts that you can put in to help you get started in terms of doing your research, getting yourself to a good foundational level before then adding your own originality, tone of voice, the things that Sam was referring to. So the key around all of that is giving good guidance, and then I think from that, by giving examples and prompts being one of those around that, that's how you can help students around this in order to show how that they can differentiate. And the importance around all this is that you have to be able to show some differentiation. If you don't, then everybody's the loser.
Yeah, agreed. What are your thoughts on that, Samantha? Is this a problem that you're trying to grapple with? All candidates seeming the same because of AI?
We were worried a little bit that first year when we said, yeah, you can use it, that every candidate would score 100 out of 100 on their application form, and then we'd not know what to do. We'd have to have a really mega assessment centre to assess everybody in person, but it's not what happened. All that happened was just generally the scores kind of elevated across the board, but not everybody elevated. And of course, there were people that you'd read their answer and you'd go, okay, you've not applied yourself. This isn't you. This does sound like ChatGPT. We weren't scoring them down because it sounded like ChatGPT, but we weren't scoring them high because they weren't answering the question. They weren't personal. They weren't bringing themselves to the application form. So I guess actually behind that, our screening guidelines are such that we value the originality, the personal thought, the ability to stand out from each other, the bringing themselves into the application form. They score highly for that, and they always have. And so actually that's still the case, and the way that we screen just lends itself well to letting them embracing them using AI now. I think tools will get better, and I think it will become much harder, much harder for us to continue to use a standard application form as it is without introducing other ways to score for potential. The application form for us currently is the first part of our process, and we then have an online strengths-based assessment, and then we have the in-person assessment centres. So there are a number of hoops that they need to jump through still to get to that stage. But yeah, you said, is the application dead? I think, as Robert said, not yet, but we need to evolve it. We can't just continue to do what we've always done. That's not the best way.
I've been thinking about this, actually. There's a question in here that prompted me, and it's going to be different for all employers, but I'm interested in your take. Sam, Robert might have a view as well. And it's the volume challenge, the number of applications students are making. Because bottom line, you've got this number of vacancies. Well, let's say that's relatively consistent. The top of the funnel has just got wider. So I'm interested, is that actually where the volume challenge is? It's that initial stage, actually you generally bring forward to whatever the later process is, whether it's an interview or an assessment centre, a combination of both. Are the numbers at that stage relatively the same? So actually it's the initial stages of applications where most people are, where the increase in, I guess, rejections will occur. I assume yes, but
yeah, I mean, I'm happy to give the point about that, Stephen, is that it's a filtering system. So if the top of your funnel has been overloaded with applications, that will flow all the way through unless you redesign it, unless you get the top of your funnel adjusted to make sure that, I mean, I talk about, we always used to have a bucket sort of shape in our pipeline management of candidates. It now has to be like a cocktail glass. If we're not thinking about how we turn it into a cocktail glass, and that first initial piece around that, then the rest, which is more expensive, the in-person, the assessment centre. So if you're getting a doubling of volumes of applications, you can't have suddenly a doubling of assessment centres. There just isn't the budget for it. There isn't the resource for it. So there is a challenge that we have to think about. What do we do at the top of the funnel to make that more efficient while at the same time not introducing adverse impact, which everyone's worried about. And that's where we have to start thinking about new tools, new data points, rethinking what we're measuring and how we're measuring at the top of the funnel in order to make sure that the more human-centric one later down the funnel is still sensible and economic.
I wonder if there'll be, this is going to a slight tangent, but actually AI might develop some better career matching tools. So it's not necessarily selection, but actually the use of tools to help, direct students a bit better in terms of where they're going to be more productive applying over time. Because it does strike me that there is a challenge in that space to which there isn't a real answer at the moment, which is that, like, I think that champagne glass is great. I used to work off a ratio of 20-to-1 applications was healthy when I used to be a recruiter. Those numbers are well out the window now, I think, for most employers. And that doesn't work for anybody, really. It doesn't work for the students. It doesn't particularly work for the employers managing those volumes, I guess.
That's right. I'm just one. You go, Sam.
Sorry, Robert.
I was just going to add one final little thing on there, is I think there'll be more focus on pre-applications going forward to address this. But Sam, over to you.
Thank you. There's definitely room for some tools about the candidate matching and encouraging candidates to really think about whether the role is right for them and encouraging them to opt out of the process if it is not right for them, and moving away from this blanket apply. The blanket apply thing has always been a problem, and I don't think that will change overnight. But yeah, there's definitely room for some more tools that give candidates a better insight into what we're actually offering them as a job and whether it's right for them. I noticed one of the questions in the chat was about people, if you're getting like mass applications, are you also getting mass dropouts at, say, assessment stage and offer stage? And we also are not seeing that, but then we didn't have the huge increase that some have reported. And again, I think we do a huge amount of work behind the scenes with candidates about the expectations of our process. We set dates very far in advance. We get them in people's diary. We do a lot of extra content on Instagram, and exactly like you said, Robert, about teaching them what prompts they can use to give them that inspiration for how they can use AI to start their research right at the beginning, like way before you even get to the application stage. So I think all of that feeds into that loyalty that you build up with the candidates in the process that helps the turnover of them opting in or out as well. But yeah.
Yeah, definitely. Just briefly, I constantly need to wrap up on time pretty quickly. There was a question about AI and bonuses and ethical use. It was really interesting. I was talking to a university about possible developments actually in that matching place, and they said actually one of the barriers to them developing tools was university really concerned about ethical use of AI in terms of the impact on the environment. And I thought, I've heard that's a topic, but not actually it being seen as a barrier by an organization to developing. I wondered if you have any thoughts on that, and also that I saw the question around ethical use of AI, and somebody asked the question, well, what if somebody doesn't want to use it? I kind of imagine from an employer's perspective, it's a bit like saying you can't refuse to use spreadsheets, can you?
We love spreadsheets, don't we?
Yeah, exactly.
Especially when it comes to assessment centres. So Shoesmith has a bonus. It's a firm-wide collegiate bonus that everybody gets. So even a non-lawyer like me might be getting it. And it's run off a number of different threads. One is like a people-focused bit. One is financials, and then one changes that's more linked to the strategy at that time. And so for us, it's AI. It's a collective pool of input, and I think that we need to put in 1 million prompts into Copilot, and the idea behind that is our senior leadership signaling something that's important this year, but it's to get people comfortable using it. It's to encourage learning and encourage use, but it is not to punish or penalize people that don't use it. And I think that 1 million prompts roughly equates to 4 prompts a day per person in the business. So that could be as simple as hitting the draft button within Outlook. So we have Copilot that's integrated. It could be typing in a question into our Copilot, and many other ways that you get your prompts up for quality use. And many people in the business are far exceeding what their kind of their 4 a day would be, which means that the people who maybe are not adapting to using it or choose not to because of ethical reasons are not going to be punished, penalised, or left out. But as a collective firm, that's something that we're trying to achieve. Our sustainability, we have a sustainability manager, and we obviously have certain boundaries that we sit within as well. And one of those is that we can't create imagery. It takes up too much energy to do that. That's not something that we encourage our people to do. And we have, strict guidelines around the way that it's used inside the firm, so much as I try and share the guidelines with candidates as well. So there is that ethical sustainability vision or lens that we're looking at it through as well. And I think it's really important to take note of that.
Got it. Thanks, Sam. And just coming to you finally, David, just before we wrap this up, I guess a final question for yourself on that employer-student HE interaction. Would you have any advice for employers actually in terms of, just some overall guidelines around how they engage in this subject? Because I still get the sense that some employers are a bit, oh, this is too difficult, it's a bit too contentious. We'll try and say as little as possible. And any final thoughts on that?
Well, yeah, I mean, I think so. Just picking up on that last point from Samantha, and that you raised, Steve, as well, about the kind of ethical implications of mass usage of AI. I mean, that was I think third or fourth down student concerns around the kind of environmental impact of using large language models to, write a shopping list. And I think an acknowledgement of those concerns is something that employers should be thinking about doing. But I think the point in when I was giving my brief sort of introductory talk about clear guidance about what is expected, what is appropriate, and I think I'd be actually encouraging employers to talk to students, talk to their new recruits about how people are using AI tools in the application process to understand, well, okay, how can we actually still be assessing the skills and the competencies and the qualities that we want to be getting out of this process? Because I don't think AI is sort of breaking the tools that currently exist, but it's not breaking the fundamental model that you want a particular set of qualities and competencies that exist within a cohort, and that's what you're trying to select for. So I think while we're in this period of I guess accelerated change, it is just kind of embracing that change and working with the incoming cohort to work out, well, what is actually happening and how can we continue to assess in different ways. I'd also say work with universities as well, because I noted there's a lot of university colleagues on this call, and we're all grappling with it. We all want to help our students get the jobs that they want. I mean, from an ethical point of view, because we want to help them realize their dreams, but also it's kind of helpful for our elite tables as well. So we're open to those conversations as well. We could do student focus groups, we can bring in student societies, we can help facilitate those conversations. And so that would be my advice to recruiters on this call. Keep talking, and then we'll discover the brave new world together.
Definitely, because I think it's coming, whether we like it or not. Absolutely. Oh, that's fantastic. David, Robert, Sam, really thanks for your insights. And we had over 150 on the webinar, which shows how interested people are in this topic, and also I think how much there is that we're still trying to work through as a sector. So apologies if we didn't quite get to your question, but we will definitely be coming back to this subject, I'm sure, very much shortly. So yes, a final round of applause, virtual round of applause for David, Sam, and Robert. Really thanks for taking the time out to take part in this webinar. As I said at the very start, we have recorded it. It will go on to the ISE platform, so you'll be able to review any bits that you want to recap and also share with colleagues. And lots of thank you messages coming through, I can see on the chat from people. So that's it from me. Thank you very much, everybody. Thanks for taking part. Thanks for everybody for all those questions that you ask in the chat. It's always good to have these things as interactive as possible. Speak to you all soon.
Brilliant. Thank you.